Peace Queen. It's Melissa Crawford of thequeencode.com, and today's video is part 3 in our new series entitled Revelations, Unveiling the Great Mystery of the Divine Feminine. So in last week's video, I explained to you what I mean by that term divine feminine. It's my belief that there's one creator, and just as we are made in the image of the creator, and there's a masculine and feminine within each of us, within every human being, so too does the creator have a masculine and a feminine essence. One creator, but masculine and feminine in one. And in this society for the past 2,000, 2,500 years, we've been solely identified with the masculine element of the creator. And the divine feminine, or the feminine essence of the creator, has been very much suppressed. And we are now coming into an age where the divine feminine is coming back to the forefront. And so that's what I mean by the unveiling, because it's like you have, taking my hand for an example, you have this whole hand. But in the past 2,500 years or so, we've only been seeing this portion of it, say the bottom half of it. But there's another aspect that creates a whole picture, and so it's the divine feminine right now that is rising. And as above, so below, as the divine feminine is coming back into the forefront in the spiritual realm, it's given rise to a lot of feminine energy here on earth. And by feminine energy, it's not just meaning woman, but feminine means flow, peace, understanding, purpose, passion. All over the globe, people are starting to awaken and wanting to know, why am I here? That's the feminine arising. It's the element of cooperation over competition, of integration instead of separateness. And so as the feminine is rising, naturally there are a lot of women rising, because traditionally we are to embody the divine feminine presence here on earth. We are supposed to be the representation of the divine feminine here on earth. Again, as above, so below. And so this whole message of the queen returning to her throne, I've spoken to women all around the world, and even though they don't know me, or they may not have ever heard of the Queen Code, they don't know how they found the Queen Code, they're resonating with the message, because it's an inner thing. It's not something that I came up with and slapped a title on. It was an inner knowing within me that exists in really everyone. But as women, we're rising up and we're reclaiming our throne, and that's exactly what's happening on a spiritual realm as well. So that's what I mean by the divine feminine. And last week I also took you back and gave you some historical perspective of how the feminine was initially suppressed. When you look at a lot of ancient civilizations going back 10,000, 15, even 20,000 years before, a lot of them were civilizations where women were held in very high regard, and they knew the creator in the feminine as well. And so you would have women being very respected. To be woman was to be sacred. Our bodies were seen as life-giving forces, and we were very much held on high, to say the least. And so when you look down through history at some of the most peaceful, prosperous societies, a lot of them were headed by women, or had a matriarchal system. And so there came this time, and depending on what region of the globe you want to study in, there came a time, really about 2,500 years or so, or a little more, where from the north there came some civilizations who were very masculine in nature. And when they came to places like, say, Africa, or places what we call the Middle East now, places like Asia, up in that region, when they came to these places and saw these women in power, they felt very threatened by that, and they did not like that. And so the very things that made us powerful, the very things that made us sacred was considered many times evil. And so a lot of our temples were destroyed. A lot of our customs were banned. And as I'm telling you this story, what I don't want you to take away from this is, this whole battle of the sexes between men and women, because that is not what this is about. And we have absolutely have to get to the point where we heal that. Because being back in this feminine age, it's about, again, integration. See, the king has been on his throne for a while, but it's time for the queen to return, and we can rule and reign together. There is no competition. In order for our societies and for things in our world to be restored, we have to come up together. So I just want to be clear about that. But looking at history from a very real perspective, that's what happened. A lot of very male-dominated civilizations came in. They conquered. They leveled our temples. They banned a lot of the things that made us powerful as women. And we have yet to recover from that, even though it's been 2,500 years. But we're living in an age now of great restoration of the divine feminine. And so if you're watching this video, know that you are a queen born for such a time as this. So here on video 3, I want to talk more about what it really means to be a woman. And not just a woman, but again, to be divinely feminine. And what I want to talk to you about in this video is what I call the gift. I'm calling it the gift. And what the gift is, I can explain it this way. Back in those times, I was talking about with those very peaceful, powerful civilizations, we were known for many things. But we've always been praised for our level of intuition. In society, we've always had high ranking because, we were seen to have a direct connection with the Creator naturally. And so many times we had positions of counselor. We had position of being a judge. Even before Deborah in the Bible, we were lawgivers. We were the ones who dispensed truth and justice. Even when you look at the ancient Egyptians and their system of Ma'at. Ma'at was, M-A-A-T. Ma'at was personified as a woman. Okay? And it was all about truth, justice, peace, order. And that's what we did. We, as a divine feminine, we actually played that role. But one of the greatest roles, you had the oracles and the different seers and the counselors and the judges. One of the greatest roles that we've played as women that's really starting to come back. This feminine archetype was so powerful. And it's the best way that I can explain it and actually give a term to it, the proper term for it, would be the high priestess. Again, we had the oracle and the judges, but I want to talk about the high priestess, because really that sums it all up. The high priestess was a woman who was a healer. She was a great seer. She was a counselor. She was a woman that very powerful people would come to get direction for their path. She was, in all respects, like the direct representation of the divine feminine on earth. She had like a direct connection. She was wisdom personified. And I believe as women, we all have the high priestess within us. Some of us have the exact calling, but we all have that ability to be all of those things that I just described in the high priestess. And so the high priestess was a woman who, because she was so in her gifting, she was typically in a temple, and they had all different types of high priestesses with different roles. Some of them were ones who were over land. You would come to the temple to buy land. Some of them were ones who, wrote down history and were kind of like the griots of Africa. But basically the high priestess was a woman who lived in a sacred temple. And again, you would come to her about deep questions about your path, your life path. And she had the ability to see into the past, into the future, to help you make a decision in the present. And so this great power that we had, the gift as women of seeing, you know, when the other civilizations came down and they began to change things and establish a new order, that gift of seeing was seen to be evil. And even now, you know, fast forwarding today, there's so many women with this high priestess gifting, with the gifting to see, with the gift of prophecy, that are hiding their gifts because they don't want to be seen as evil, or they don't want to be seen as weird, or they don't have anyone to really relate to. And so they're hiding their gift. So you have, you know, when you look back in time, you have really the death of the high priestess. We took that piece of ourselves as women and we buried it, along with the power of our intuition. And sometimes we use our intuition as like mother wit, but our intuition is so strong, it goes beyond that. So we took this gift of being able to see and we hid it along with our intuition, and we've hidden it for so long that we can't even tap into it for ourselves to make life decisions. So many queens around the globe will talk to me about, Melisi, how do I make this decision? How do I know how to trust my intuition? Because we've been outside of the gates for so long, second guessing our gift. You can even fast forward in history to, you know, the 15th on up to the 18th century, when they would have, say, the witch hunts in Europe and North America. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there were some women who had divine powers that were using them for evil. I'm sure. Let's keep it real. But there are a lot of women who just simply had the gift of seeing, that were burned at the stake because of a divine gift that they had. And so even though we're not living back in that era, that same mentality still prevails. And it's time for us to overcome that. Because how do you step into your power fully as a woman if you cannot tap into your intuition? And if you have the gift of seeing, if you're hiding that, you're supposed to help people with that. My goodness, I remember years ago, I would not have had the courage to do a 2013 Queen Prophecy, a 2014 Queen Prophecy. I would not have had the courage to do that. I'm from South Carolina. And if you know anything about the South and how, you know, I love the South all day, but we can be very close-minded at times. And so all of these different things, all of these different opinions of other people, what will they think of me? What will they say? All of that could have stopped me from operating powerfully in my gifting. But knowing that I am a modern day high priestess, I know what it is I have to do, and how can I call myself a queen on my throne if I'm timid about claiming the beautiful divine feminine gifts that the Creator has given to me. And so I'm saying all of this to you, Queen, to say, if you're watching this video, and if you're the kind of woman who have been stuffing that beautiful gift of seeing away, maybe you can clearly see what's going to happen before it does. And you don't know who to share that with, and maybe it scares you. Claim that. There are a lot of women right now who had that gift when they were young, and you've buried it, and now your daughter has it. And she may be more willing to come forth than you are, but you can still go back and reclaim that for yourself. So that's what I'm saying to you, Queen. It is not an accident that the women that I'm speaking to, it's like, especially the ones that I've mentored one-on-one, most of them have a story of waking up on cue somewhere between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning. When you look at that divine time, it's not what was called long ago evil, but it's actually a sacred time where women used to get up and pray, and women used to get up and meditate and bind things on earth, knowing that it will be bound in heaven, and loose things on earth, knowing that it will be loosed in heaven. That is our mission. So the next time your eyes pop open and it's 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and you can't get back to sleep, just start praying, Queen. Start praying. Start listening. What's coming up for you right now? All of these things that we think are weird, they're not weird. And even if no one seems to understand you, know that I do. And there are a whole lot of other women around the globe that also understand you are not alone. So again, for part 3, let's go back and reclaim the gift. Okay? That's my message for you today. In the meantime, I do have a wonderful gift for you. 2014 is not over. If you go to my website at thequeencode.com, you can download your free copy of Reign as Queen in 2014, and also pop over to the Queen store, because we have tons of resources for you to really navigate your way through this whole process of learning yourself again and knowing yourself in a deeper way. So all you simply have to do to get those resources is go to www.thequeencode.com, and I'll talk to you soon.